All right, guys, we are back for Game of Thrones Season 1, Episode 6, titled A Golden Crown. We're actually going to start off in King's Landing. That's my favorite place to start. So we're going to talk about what was going on initially with Cersei and Robert. I wanted to talk about their evolving relationship. Well, not evolving, but they're showing us more of it and what you think about it.
So this is right after Jamie has attacked Ned, and Ned is recuperating. He's been stitched up, and he's sitting on the bed looking pretty sickly. And he and Robert are having an argument actually about his wife, about Ned's wife, and how she took Tyrion basically for no reason as they see it,
Yeah.
or as Cersei and Robert see it. And Ned is pleading, she didn't do this without me having told her to do it.
Yeah.
So whatever ill feelings you have, they're directing toward me. And Cersei's having none of it. She's like, no, we need to go get her and cut her throat, basically. She's really upset. And then Ned and Cersei go back and forth, and Robert, he decides, oh, you guys are just screaming. I don't want to deal with any of this. Just stop it. Send a raven to tell. Yeah, I did that the last time. I said firepower instead of rocks being thrown. But send a raven to have Tyrion picked up and brought back, and your wife Ned also needs to come back and explain to us what's going on. And Cersei's like, no, that's not justice. We need action. We need boots on the ground. We need to send an army and snatch up Catelyn. and no, I'm done with all this. So she gets pretty riled up and she starts raising her voice. And Robert finally just turns around and he slaps her in the face. He's like, listen, I'm the king. You can't talk to me like that. Don't raise your voice in my presence. And Cersei's like, yeah, you just slapped me, but this only shows what kind of king, what kind of man you are. Mm-hmm. That you're not willing to go out and do this, but instead you want to beat up on me. And Robert kind of just shrugs her off, like, lady, I'm going to talk to my buddy here for a second. And he says to Ned, oh, this is actually when Cersei left, so Cersei leaves.
Well, hold on. Before that, I want to mention how she said I should wear the armor and you the gown.
Oh, yeah. So, again, that just goes back to she doesn't see Robert as a valiant king. Mm-hmm. A king that will assert his power. A king that will show his people that the kingdom and the throne will not be disrespected.
Now, when you first saw Robert and Cersei, your initial thought was, I see her as more queenly than him. Yes. Do you still feel that way after having seen a bit of them each? Do you kind of side with her in the whole dynamic of their relationship?
No, only because Robert is evolving. Okay. In my eyes, anyway. And this has been going on for the last couple of episodes. Again, we're getting more backstory about him, getting a more in-depth look into who he is as a person, into his soul, really. Yeah. And what he's battling internally and what he's had to battle physically through wars and having taken up the kingdom after Lord Aaron was killed. So he's not a typical pick up the sword and shield and go fight yet, but I'm seeing more of it.
Gotcha. And you're seeing that it at least exists.
It exists, yeah. It's there underneath all of the flubber. So, but that doesn't take away
alcohol.
Right. That doesn't take away though from Cersei's continued what's the word I'm looking for? She's still exerting herself as a dominant presence to the throne as well. And that hasn't changed, period, and that doesn't surprise me that she would act that way in front of Robert, and it doesn't surprise me that she would say those kinds of things and have those kinds of strong feelings
Mm-hmm.
toward action needing to be taken.
Yeah.
So, um, Cersei, yes, she's still more of a royal type to me, but at the same time, Robert is showing that he is that person underneath.
Mm-hmm.
He just doesn't want to right now.
Gotcha. I see. Okay,
Um,
fair, fair. Okay, and so then we see Robert go off on a hunt. And they don't really talk much about it, but they just show that he's kind of doing it to blow off steam. And then he talks to his brother, and you figured out that Renly was his brother,
Right.
actually. So does that make the presence of Renly and Loras less random in your eyes?
it's less random, but I still am not invested in it.
Gotcha.
Renly, he again, we got a little bit of an introduction in the last episode, and he was a very subdued person.
Mm-hmm.
He was very shy, and he didn't really want to accept the compliments that Loris
Yeah.
was giving him. But all of a sudden, in the presence of Robert, which apparently he has this great disdain for, he's willing to talk back to him, chide him. It could be just because he's his brother, but even Robert says, "Yes, you are my brother, but I'm still the king. You can't talk to me like that." But he Renly does anyway, and he doesn't care what the consequences are. Apparently, there aren't any, um, because they have that spat, and then he storms off. So it was just a complete flip flop of who Renly is. So I'm
So did that seem out of character then?
yes.
Oh, okay.
From what
Well, you'd
we
only
saw,
seen him once,
right?
though. But yeah, okay, that makes sense. Because yeah, I mean, I guess to me, I just saw. I understand what Robert and what you are saying about Robert being the king, but I guess I saw just two brothers, and that's probably just how people talk to each other,
And that-
even in those situations.
And that's
I
fine.
imagine.
But he wasn't that combative towards Laris.
Well, oh well, yeah. So you're wondering where that disdain
Right.
comes from?
And
Gotcha.
and where that brashness came from.
Well, I don't know if you heard Robert in this episode, but he said that he never loved either of his brothers, and it's possible that Renly knows that.
And that's fine. But from what I've seen of Renly,
Mm,
that's a different person
Gotcha.
than what we saw just now. Or
Okay.
what I saw just now.
and I mean, I guess you also. I don't know if this has anything to do with anything, but Robert was asking him about the girls that he slept with and stuff like that. So, I mean, it kind of makes sense that Renly seems to be living some sort of double life sort of thing that Robert doesn't know about.
And yes, he's absolutely living a secret double life. But that, as far as
But that shouldn't have changed his personality,
right,
I guess
yeah,
what you're saying.
and if that is a part of his personality, I just didn't see it until
Gotcha.
now, and it's
Okay.
weird. The contrast is weird.
I see. Makes sense. Because he did seem like kind of like a soft boy
Yeah.
in the other one.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fair.
I do want to go back to what you said about what Robert was saying about his brothers. This is back before the hunt when he's talking to Ned. And he tells Ned, hey, take this pendant back.
Mhm.
You're going to be the hand.
Yeah.
And if you don't want it, I'll give it to Jaime Lannister. But he also says, you don't. I have two brothers, or however many he has, and I don't love any of them. And then he looks at Ned and he says, you're the brother that I chose.
Mhm.
And that kind of highlighted for me the relationship that we've seen thus far.
Okay.
And why he is so close, so open, and so vulnerable with Ned. I thought that was really interesting that they would put that in there and give us that little bit of a window into what Robert is really feeling about this whole situation, about his family, about being king, and then on the other side of that, what he really wants is this relationship with someone that he can call family,
Mhm.
but unfortunately it's not his blood.
Yeah.
So I thought that was interesting.
Okay, cool. Okay, so saying King's Landing, we're gonna jump ahead a little bit. I wanted to talk about Ned talking to Arya and Sansa at the end, or toward the end. They were talking about how he's sending them back to Winterfell for their safety, and all of that stuff. So I just kind of wanted to talk about that conversation
Um,
and what you
oh,
gleaned from
so
it.
this is after Ned has gotten news of someone attacking a village from, or where his wife is from.
Yeah, the Riverlands.
And this knight, what was the knight's name?
Gregor Clegane, aka the Mountain.
The Mountain, because I can't say that name. The Mountain has ransacked this village, set women and children on fire, slaughtered a bunch of people, and as a sign to let him know where he just came from, he brought a fish. He didn't bring him; he left them. There's a bunch of slaughtered fish, and that was a sign that, hey, yeah, I just wrecked this place.
Yeah.
So Ned is feeling some
And not
kind
only
of
did
way.
he wreck that place, he wrecked Ned's wife's
Right,
home, which
right.
he wanted to make clear.
So Ned picks up on that, obviously, and
With some help from Littlefinger.
yeah, um, Ned makes this announcement that says, "Hey," he calls out one of his lords, and he says, "Gather 100 men, go after this guy." As sitting king, essentially, I strip this knight of basically everything he has, of his title, his land, his riches, his possessions, and he gets to be sentenced to death. Also, any of his partners in this crime, they all get to die too. So take this army, go find them, and cut them down. On the heels of that, he also understands that his family's safety is going to be in danger
Mhm.
because of any kind of retaliation.
And he also summons Tywin Lannister.
Right. Um, and the Mountain isn't. Oh, he's a bulldog of Tywin
Yeah.
Lannister. Kind of a hitman kind of thing. So he doesn't want all of that heat in this place where his daughters are. So he says, you guys are going back to King's Landing. Winterfell.
They're in King's Landing. You're
So,
getting there, though.
Yeah.
At least you know what it is.
And Sansa isn't having it. She wants to stay there because that's where Joffrey is. And she and Joffrey has just had this heartfelt, I'm going to say, conversation. And those two are seeming to have a budding relationship that is about to take off. And
Does that show you a new side of Joffrey?
I'll get to that. So she's really excited about this new life she's about to begin, about to be queen, about to have all these babies, and she's ready to step into her role as queen of all the kingdoms. And Arya is in the middle of her fighting lessons, her sword fighting lessons, with Syria,
Yes.
and she doesn't want to leave either. But that particular conversation struck me because it highlighted who Joffrey is. Because Ned says to Sansa, "Don't worry about Joffrey. I'll find you a better match who's strong and a fighter and valiant and courageous." All of these adjectives that are the opposite of Joffrey. And Sansa says, "I don't want any of that. I want Joffrey." And Arya looks at Ned with a smirk on her face. And then Ned looks back at Arya with a smirk on his face like, "Really?" I was trying to get away from that. But you say it. You see it. She's crazy, right? So, Sansa throws a temper tantrum. Arya gets it. She's like, "Whatever, Dad says we have to go." So she pulls Sansa away, and they go pack or whatever. But yeah, that was really interesting and more hilarious to see that Sansa is just all in with being a queen, having these babies, and having been chosen by Joffrey. It doesn't matter what Joffrey is. I guess she doesn't. She's very young and naive and doesn't understand what the king's role will have to be at
Yeah.
some point.
And what his privileges will be.
Right. She just has this crush,
Yeah.
basically. A crush on Joffrey and on the idea of this plan that she has
Yeah.
for her life.
Now, I was just going to ask you, do you think that this is more of a crush on Joffrey or more of a crush on being queen?
It's probably 60-40 Queen Joffrey.
Okay.
But and I think she understands that she was chosen to be in this position, so she's all in on being in this position.
Yeah.
But she also understands that it's Joffrey who is going to be her husband.
Yeah.
And father of her children. So she's accepted that that's the guy.
Yeah.
I have to want him because that's what the queen does.
Yeah.
Wants the prince who has chosen her. Joffrey chose her, so she's going to commit herself to Joffrey. But again, I think there's a slight edge to just the idea of that life that she's more enamored with.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, she's like styling her hair differently because she's in the South and all of these things. She's kind of like not really thinking much about her northern identity as much as you say Arya still does.
Right.
Even though Arya rejects the idea of being a lady and all of these things, like you can kind of tell she's a northerner still,
Sure.
though. Yeah. Okay. And then so after that, Ned goes and starts looking through this book.
Yes.
That's all I'm going to
So
say.
he in this book has history and lineage of all of the kingdoms, and he's flipping through the pages, and we see Lannister, we see Umber, and then he flips a few more pages to Baratheon, and he lists off several names, and at the end of each name, kind of a descriptor says of black hair.
Mm-hmm.
And he lists 4 or 5 different people, and he gets to Robert Baratheon of black hair. And then next in line is Joffrey Baratheon of gold hair, blonde hair. And it's weird, and I don't know if it's a hindsight is 20/20 kind of thing, but as soon as he said that, I had this feeling that I thought I'd been having this whole time, that Joffrey wasn't Robert's son.
Okay.
And I don't know if I've had that feeling this whole time. It felt like it when Robert said that. It felt like I knew this already.
Mm-hmm.
But it seemed to me that the show was implying, in Robert's face, or I'm not sorry, Ned's face.
Yeah.
It seemed to imply that he just figured out that Joffrey isn't Robert's son. And who is it? One of the daughters, Sansa or Arya, says something to the effect of Joffrey isn't like Robert.
Yeah, Sansa said that.
And then those two things combined brought back this feeling that I believe that I've been having this entire time.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes sense because the show wouldn't have made a big deal about the hair color if they didn't want to insinuate something.
And they've been talking about the Lannisters' hair color for a long time.
Right, that's been a theme throughout.
Yeah.
So there's going to be a revelation at some point, or maybe there isn't, and this is a red herring. But yeah, it was very weird, a very weird feeling to kind of be validated in this hunch that Joffrey, because Sansa's right, he doesn't act like Robert at all.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't look like Robert at all. And the show has been presenting this blonde hair thing. And he seems a very pure blonde-headed kid. Like there's no mix of like dirty blonde in it. There's no brunette at all. So I don't know what that scene was trying to say, but I'm gonna say it. Joffrey isn't Robert's kid. Let's just move on because I don't want you to say anything.
Okay, sounds good. Just wanted to get that out of the way. So now we're gonna go ahead and move to the Vale, and we're gonna talk about, first of all, Tyrion's cleverness, I guess I want to say, and how he sort of tricks his way out of the cell and then into an audience with Catelyn and her sister. And we find out what flying means in the Vale. And so, yeah, I kind of just wanted to talk about Tyrion's trial and how you felt about trial by combat, since that's the first time we've heard about that.
So he's in this sky cell.
Yeah.
That's what they call it. And the first thing that we see of him is he's literally on the edge of this thing. He's lying down. He's tired. He's probably fallen asleep. And he's just out of it. And he calls for Mord. And that's the
guard.
Prison guard, yeah. And the guard comes storming in and he like beats him up, kind of pushes him back toward the edge. And he's got this paddle or something. He keeps hitting him with it. And Tyrion is like, I'm a Lannister. I've got gold. And Mord's like, where is it? And Tyrion's like, well, I don't have it with me. I'm a prisoner. I thought that was hilarious. But he essentially makes this bargain with Mord. He says, hey, go tell Lady Aaron that I've got a message. And if you deliver this message, I will give you my gold. They had it, but Lannisters always repay their debts. So do this for me, and I will give you this gold. And the message is, I want to confess my crimes. So they put him in front of everybody, in front of Lady Aaron, in front of Catelyn and Robin, Lady Aaron's son. What's her, Lysa?
Lysa is her name, yeah. Good job. You got these names.
So he's in the middle of the room, and he admits that, he wants to confess his crime. So he starts telling these childhood stories about all of these things he's done as a kid, and he just is a mischievous little person. Well, a double entendre.
Yeah, I know what you meant. You meant child.
I meant child. That's amazing. So he's telling us about all these things that he's done, and he talks about how he made the little bald man cry into this stew that his sister ate, or that he hopes that his sister ate. And
knowing Cersei, we all hope that too.
Right. So finally, Lysa's like, okay, that's enough. I'm glad you had your chuckle, but I need you to confess to... No. Yeah, I need you to confess to having tried to murder Bran. Mm-hmm. And actually, it's Catelyn who says that. But,
yeah.
Tyrion's like, oh, you meant that crime. I had nothing to do with that. But if you want to put me on trial for it, yeah, let's do that. And Robin's like, I want the little man to fly. So Lysa instructs some of the people to open the moon gate. Moon door?
Moon door.
Open the moon door. And it's essentially this trap door in the floor that leads to the sky, basically. And miles down to the ground. So that's what flying means. You get tossed out of the castle.
Yeah, flying is death.
Yeah. And Tyrion is like, no, I don't want to be put on an actual trial. I don't want to be found guilty and thrown into this pit. We're not doing that. Let's do trial by combat. And Lysa looks at him like, really? You know the laws? I can't. Fine.
So when you first heard that, were you like, oh, wow, trial by combat? I wasn't expecting that. Or was it just like some random thing that
no, I don't think I expected him to bring it up, but it doesn't surprise me.
Gotcha.
Given the time period.
So you've known that trial by combats were...
Yeah.
I didn't know that until I watched the show,
Fair
to
enough.
be honest.
So, Tyrion, he mentions during his confessional that he isn't very good at violence, but he is good at convincing other people to do violent things for him. Mm-hmm. So we fast forward to this trial by combat, and Lysa asks for a champion to fight Tyrion, and she has 6 or 7 different people all raising their swords saying, I'll do it. And there's one, who was this person that she highlighted who wasn't saying anything? What was his name?
I don't think it matters.
Okay.
Honestly.
So there was one person in particular who seemed a bit too quiet for Lysa's liking. And she says, hey, don't you want to avenge my husband's death?
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, of course I would, except this is an imp, and that wouldn't be very honorable. So Tyrion suggests, how about I have somebody fight for me in this trial? And Lysa's like, oh, really? More of the laws that you know about. So she says, okay, who would you like to be your champion? And he says, I want my brother, Jaime Lannister, to come down here. It'll be about a week. I'll wait.
Yeah.
It's okay. Just send a raven. And he'll come down. He's known as the Kingslayer. I don't know if you know that. So we'll bring him in, have him fight your champion, and I'm going to go home. And Lysa's like, no, we're not having any of that. This is going down today. So Tyrion says, all right, I need a volunteer. And one of the people he's riding with,
Yeah.
that was with Catelyn,
Yeah.
that confused me.
It was weird. It was out of nowhere.
So he steps up and says, I'll fight for Tyrion. So he and the champion of Lysa's choosing go at it. And it was really weird, this fight scene, because Lysa's champion had a shield and full armor, while Tyrion's champion didn't. He just had a sword. And I immediately knew the guy with the shield was going to lose.
Mm-hmm.
It was very awkward seeing that fight because it was so outmatched, not only in a physical standpoint, but a mental standpoint too. Like, he outsmarted him in this duel.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't make any sense. He had him chase him around the castle, and he tired him out because he's so heavy. And then he slices a few of his tendons in his legs, so he can't walk straight. And then he finally shoves the sword down into his jugular and throws him down the trap door, down the moon door. And everybody's like, oh, did that really happen? Okay. You get to go now, Tyrion. And then Tyrion's like, hey, buddy, I need my coin purse back. I owe this man some money. So he gets his gold, throws it at Mord, and then he leaves.
So I really liked that whole making a show out of getting his purse back.
Oh, yeah.
But they thought it was just because he wanted his money. But in fact, it was like, I have a debt to pay
Yeah.
because I live up to my family, one of my family's sayings.
Right.
So I thought that was really cool that they showed how immediately, like, after he made that promise, that he actually delivered on it.
Right.
I thought that was really cool. But yeah, so that was... So yeah, so what did that make you think of Tyrion, that whole situation? Like, did that change or evolve your opinion on Tyrion? Because we had a lot of him, and we saw a lot of who he really is in this episode.
It highlighted what we've seen already from him. He's a smooth talker.
Mm-hmm.
He's very clever, and he can get himself out of any situation if he needs to.
Yeah.
Again, he can persuade others to do things for him that will help him get him out of this trouble. But the way that he talks to people in kind of a slighted respect for who they are, and at the same time, he's kind of insulting your intelligence.
Yeah.
By asking you to do some of the things he wants you to do. But you go along with it because he's so charismatic.
Yeah.
And that's just... It may be that I am just seeing Peter Dinklage's charisma shining through, but it's
playing
very well as Tyrion.
Yeah. The character in the book is very similar too. But yeah, okay, so cool. Now we're gonna move on to Winterfell, and we're gonna talk about Bran and him riding on his saddle that Tyrion made for him, and the wildlings that attack him.
Okay. First, I want to talk about how Bran looks. He has his full garb on as someone from the north.
Mm-hmm.
He looks like Ned, basically. And he's got the fur wrapped around him. He's got the armor. It's not really armor, it's leather.
In a way that Robb doesn't?
Yeah.
Okay.
So when I see Robert...
No, not Robert. Robb.
Ned. Rob? Oh, his brother.
Yeah.
Yeah, he didn't look like Rob either. He looked like
okay.
Ned.
Okay.
He looked very valiant. He looked very prestigious.
Okay.
He looked like what Joffrey should look like.
That's awesome.
So and that's really what I was seeing when I saw him on that horse wearing all of that.
Mhm.
Like he looks more like a prince than Joffrey does.
Okay.
And I don't like Joffrey even more now. It's so weird. Like, why can't Joffrey look like this? But they're from two different lands, so
Yeah.
that probably explains it. But it also just highlights how those from the north are just so much different
For sure.
than the Lannisters. But he's riding on this horse, and does he have the bow and arrow?
I don't think so.
he
I
is.
don't think he
I think
did.
he's just riding it.
Yeah.
And he's having a good old time though. And he didn't think that he'd be able to ride a horse anymore. So this was an awesome experience for him. So he rides off out of earshot and eyeshot of Theon and Rob, who are having an argument about what happened between Ned and Jaime.
Yeah.
And they notice that they don't know where Bran is. And we cut to a shot of Bran being surrounded by these wildlings. I didn't know that's what they were until you said it just now.
Okay.
It's like, who are these people? I just
Yeah,
figured
I
they
think
were
they
randos.
I think they said it in the show,
Gotcha.
but and you know what wildlings are, right? Do you remember people talking about
so
them?
those are the things that what's Ned's brother's name?
Benjen.
At the wall. Yeah, Benjen. He's the one. He's fighting those.
Yeah,
things.
yeah.
So they don't know who Bran is, but they notice that he's got all these shiny things on him, this pendant, and they want his horse. It's a really good horse, so I'll get some money for it. And Bran finally just says, "Hey, I'm Bran Baratheon
Stark.
Stark."
What?
Yeah.
You were doing so well too.
Bran Stark. And if you don't let me go, I'll have my dad kill you, basically. And they're like, yeah, whatever. No one's around. Get off the horse. And he's like, I literally can't. Take a look under this. I cannot move. So they undo the straps and they try to wrestle him off. And Rob walks up and he engages a couple of them. There's two guys and a woman. He slits the throat of the first man who comes at him, and then he's got the woman on the ground about to slit her throat when the older of the three has Bran off the horse and is about to slit his throat. And he says, drop the sword and let her go. And then we see an arrow piercing through his chest, and he falls to the ground, and that's Theon, who has come up behind them and saves Bran from this third wildling that was attacking. And they let the woman live, and I guess she just goes away. We don't hear anything about her. But then Rob and Theon have another argument about Theon having killed that wildling. And he's like, you're not an executioner. That's not what law is here. It's not justice. You shouldn't have done that. And Theon's like, I just saved Bran's life.
Yeah.
You're welcome. Ray, are you serious?
Right? Okay, so did you agree with Theon in that situation?
Like, come on. What are you doing?
Because I felt like that too. Like every time I watched that, I'm like, I understand that yes, there was a slight chance that he could have hit Bran, but Bran could have also got his throat slit,
right,
like super easily. So
I definitely trusted Theon to have made that shot.
Yeah, and I mean, like we know that Theon is in that kind of precarious situation with the Starks. But, like, from what we've seen of him, he's close enough to that family that it was fine for him to do that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Have you gotten that impression, at least?
Yeah, especially since he's trusted enough to be around him.
Yeah.
With only the Maester.
Yeah.
And then with Rob, like, he's there.
Yeah.
He's armed for this reason.
Yeah.
So, yeah, if there's an attempt on his life and he can do something about it, yeah, shoot him in the heart. And he shot him in the heart. He didn't miss. There was not even a chance that Bran was going to be hurt. He got him.
Yeah.
So calm down, Rob.
Yeah, I thought that too. I was just like, okay, I don't understand this, but it's fine. It worked itself out.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, I'm glad that we talked about that, just because I wanted to see if that showed you, because like you noticed some things about Bran that I didn't even notice. Just about how he kind of resembled Ned and how he was just more princely. I never really thought about that, and so that was really interesting. But did that show you like, I guess like a side of Bran you didn't think you'd get to see, just because he's been so like, we saw him as like this happy child climbing on the battlements and stuff like that. But ever since then, he's been paralyzed. He's been depressed. So was it interesting? Is it something of a surprise to see him like up and happy again?
It was a very pleasant surprise
Yeah.
to see more character from him, and not just that side of having been in a coma for
Yeah.
3 episodes, basically. So now we get to learn about who Bran is
Okay.
and what he wants. And again, to see him in his full drab, it was really cool, actually. And again, such a stark contrast
Mhm.
to this other prince who, well, I don't want to talk about it.
Go too far into Joffrey. But yeah, another thing that I think Theon implied in this episode, which I didn't notice before, but he said you're not a man until you're not a man until you've killed your first person, and I think that implies that Bran killed one of those wildlings, because I saw Bran fighting one of them off, but I didn't know that he actually killed one of them. But it seemed like that's what Theon was saying. I might need to watch it again.
I do remember him saying that.
Because he says well done or good job or something. You're not a man until
Right.
you killed your first person in the Iron Island. So it seemed like that's what he was implying.
But if I'm not mistaken, there were only 3 of them.
Mm-hmm.
Rob killed one of them.
Rob killed one and Theon killed one.
And then
But
there
I
was a
think
woman.
Bran might have killed. Oh yeah, that's true. Because one of them lived.
Right.
So yeah, I don't know. Maybe he didn't. I don't know why Theon said that then.
I don't know. Or maybe he was implying that he'd give credit to Bran for one of them? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. That was weird. Okay, yeah, because you're right. I'm pretty sure there was only 3 and only 2 of them died.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I thought that was weird. Because I was like, wow, that changes my perspective on Bran right now.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know if he actually did that. Never mind. But yeah, so okay, now we're gonna move over to Essos, and we're gonna talk about some really fun things that happened with Dany. So we're gonna start off with her holding her egg over the fire and just kind of like being a little weird and being a little dragony. But yeah, let's talk about that.
First, I need to address you calling her Dany. I understand that Varys calls her that later. Viserys calls her that later. Varys is that bald guy, the eunuch. Daenerys. Let's just stick with that for right now.
Okay, for right now, I will say that. I also will tell you that that's just one of the names she has in the fandom, so people just call her that.
Fair enough.
But yeah, I wasn't just calling her that because her brother calls her that.
I'm pretty sure I understood that.
Yeah.
But I don't want to get confused.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I literally didn't even think about that. I was like, of course you know who Dany is.
Yeah, right. We're best friends. So, I feel like we're going to be, though. So she's looking at these dragon eggs, and she's contemplating this egg no longer being an egg and being a dragon. And I'm like, yes, I agree with you. I don't want this to be an egg anymore either. So she looks over at this fire pit, and she's like, oh, I just need to warm this up. So let me take it over to these coals and just set it down. And I'm like, sit on it too. Get this nice and toasty and hatch this egg. So someone walks in, and because Daenerys is now attempting to pick up the egg again, and she actually has it in her hand, and someone is startled, be like, hey, that thing was in the fire, and now you're touching it.
Yeah.
Give me that. Which makes no sense. But,
well, I guess it was like better me than you sort of thing.
So she grabs it, the helper, and her hands get burnt, obviously, because this egg has been in these coals. And Daenerys grabs it back from her and says, and looks at her hands. It's like, oh, you're hurt. And you can see the scales having been burned into each of the helper's hands. But at the same time, you see that Daenerys's hands aren't hurt or burnt or anything like that.
Which recalls her the very first time we see her stepping into that really hot bath, and someone was like, "Oh, it's too hot," and she's like, "I don't care." Remember that?
I
It was
do
like the
remember
very
that,
first introduction to her.
but at the same time, that's real life too.
Gotcha.
So that they probably were trying to plant that seed,
Yeah.
but it didn't really register.
Yeah, I guess I'm saying like now you understand that that was more than just
Right,
hot water.
Right.
Yeah.
So yes, we see now that Daenerys has some kind of invulnerability to immense heat. That's what I got gathered.
True that. Were you a little disappointed there were no dragons? This
Yes,
particular
there
episode.
there should have been a baby Spyro running around.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I think they just wanted to tease you with the dragons a little bit. But then we see something even cooler when she is surrounded in a hut. What?
You think this is cool?
When she's surrounded in a hut
Eating this
and
animal
she's
heart?
eating a heart of a horse. And I'm gonna tell you my thoughts on that scene, but I want to hear yours first.
Okay. It was a ritual, and I don't know if I fully understand what the ritual was supposed to do or represent, but it's something apparently that a Khaleesi does, and that is to be accepted into this coal, just to eat this heart and keep it down. And if you don't, I guess you fail. I'm not really sure what was going on, but that's a test that she had to pass. And everyone's chanting, everybody's dancing and screaming and hollering. There's one person reciting this poem in another language, in Jorah.
Yes.
He translates it for Viserys. And it's just a bunch of lore about these people. And
they specifically talked about the stallion who will mount the world.
Yeah.
And who will unite all of the Khalasars into one Khalasar.
Yeah, and I was like, okay, that's fine. The only thing that I got from that scene is she's having a son, and his name is going to be Kago, or something like that. Rhaego? Rhaego. It was Rhaego.
Yes, exactly. I don't know if you made the connection, but they were saying, like, what they were reciting was about the baby. It was like a prophecy. They were saying that, like, this baby that's inside of her is this thing that he was explaining.
Fair enough.
But yeah, so, and Daenerys is like super stoked about it. And what I loved about that scene, why I said it was cool, because it was, but why I said that was cool was because her husband, who, for all intents and purposes, like, just bought this wife just because he needed one, and she was a little bit different. But now he's seeing her and he's like, man, did I make the right decision? Because I'm just watching her like absorb my culture and transform, and like she's eating this heart and like proving herself among all of these people. And I just thought it was so cool, just the way that he was looking at her with this like deep, like lustful, like loving face of just like, man, that's my wife right there, you know.
Okay.
And so that's why I really liked that scene. It really deepened their relationship in my eyes.
Fair enough.
And it showed what she was willing to do to be a part of his culture and his life, and how she's like already has completely separated from Viserys's plan. She's just like living her life as the queen or the Khaleesi of this Khalasar.
And I'm glad you brought that up, actually, because that 100% pays off at the end of the episode.
And so then, right after that, you know, like there's a big celebration because she's gotten the heart down. I mean, I don't think she would have been like killed or divorced from him if she didn't.
Right.
I think it was just I think it also probably had more to do with like the success of her pregnancy. I think it was probably more about that than just her being his wife. But yes, so after that we see Viserys, and he's trying to steal these dragon eggs because he's like, okay, I'm not getting anything out of this anymore, and they're probably going to kill me at some point anyways because they all hate me. And so he's trying to steal these eggs, and Jorah stops him, and I wanted to get some insights on that.
So it was interesting because by the end of that scene, what I gathered is both Jorah and Viserys were breaking their vows to a particular party of this threesome or this deal, because Viserys says, "Why are you trying to stop me from stealing these eggs? I thought you were on my side. They're mine.
Yeah.
I'm gonna take them." And he's like, "You can't steal these from the Dothraki. That's
Yeah.
not how this works. I'm not gonna let you." So and this goes back to what we were talking about in the previous episode. I don't know what Jorah's doing.
I think what that scene was showing was because I mean Jorah is supposed to be loyal to Viserys because Viserys is the supposed king
Right.
or whatever, and so he's supposed to be supporting this master plan of theirs to retake the Seven Kingdoms or whatever. But in Viserys's eyes, that means supporting him, not supporting Daenerys. So what Jorah was just doing essentially was shifting his support to Daenerys away from Viserys, and that's what his part of the like how he was saying like and yet you stand like opposing me or whatever, and he's like yeah because I'm with her, and Jorah or Viserys was breaking his part of the contract because this all hinged upon that marriage with Dany, and so if he's just going to take these eggs and leave, then he's not fulfilling what he was doing with the army and everything like that. So I think that was pretty much all that conversation was about.
Fair enough.
Okay, and then we get to the real tea, and we see Viserys stumbling into their campsite drunk and just like raving on and on. So did you see what was what was about to happen, or like as far as him threatening Dany, or because I saw like once he pulled out his knife, you had a little bit of a reaction as though you weren't necessarily sure he was about to take it that far.
No, the reason that I reacted that way is because I knew he was going to die.
Gotcha. Because you were just kind of waiting for it, but you were like, oh, this is the moment.
Oh, this is the moment. Because, and I don't necessarily know, because, and even Viserys says this a few seconds later, but I didn't necessarily know what the customs of the Dothraki are or were, but I had a feeling that they weren't going to allow some stranger to pull a sword, first of all, in front of the king.
Yeah.
Secondly, in front of this queen who has this child inside.
Directed at her, especially, yeah.
And then points it at the child.
Yeah.
Like, no, you don't survive this. Doesn't matter. He hasn't really said much to this point. He just has the sword out and is pointing it at the baby.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you're going to die.
Yeah.
Drogo, he's going to murder you. And then we get to Viserys' monologue, and he goes on about, this is a transaction. Drogo got what he wanted. Now, I was promised something, and I haven't gotten it yet. I want it now. And it's basically the throne. And hit the crown, specifically.
Yeah. Or at least, like, moving toward that plan, yeah.
So, he says to Viserys, he says to Daenerys, we're leaving because I didn't get what I wanted. If he wants this baby, I'll cut it out of you. Leave it, but we're leaving. And Jorah kind of warns him, like, hey, what are you doing? You can't just do this. And Viserys says, I can, because they're not going to do anything about it. They're not going to spill blood in their sacred land. And by sacred land, it was that area of the kingdom where they were. So he was feeling pretty confident that he can come in here, pull this sword, and do whatever he wants, and then bounce.
Yeah.
So he says out loud, and then the translator says to Drogo, he wants his crown, or he's gonna leave. And Drogo basically says, okay. Well, it's translated. Daenerys says to Viserys, his response is yes, you can have your crown. And Drogo stands up, he walks over to Daenerys, holds her stomach, looks her in the eye, and you don't see anything happen, but what is implied, or what I saw anyway, was Daenerys telling Drogo, "Do what you got to do.
Yeah.
I, this is unacceptable. Whatever decision you're about to make it."
Yeah.
So Drogo then says to Viserys, "You want your crown? Okay, you'll get a crown of gold.
This is a crown for a king.
Yeah. Crown
No.
of fire.
No. He says a crown for a king. Daenerys says, "You shall have a golden crown that men will tremble to behold."
Right. So, Drogo takes off some gold that he's got wrapped around his waist, and he throws into this cauldron that is sitting over this fire, and he lets it melt. And then I'm like, okay, oh, he's gonna literally get a golden crown. I understand now. Two of the other Dothraki, they kind of get Viserys on his knees, and Drogo pours this hot cauldron of gold over Viserys' head, and it killed him. And I was like, yeah. And what was more interesting about that is, again, Daenerys, because Jorah says to her, turn away. You don't want to look at this.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, no, I have to look at this.
Yeah.
And she says, after he has been killed and he's lying on the ground dead, she says out loud, he wasn't a true dragon. Dragons can't be hurt by fire.
Mm.
And that kind of had two meanings, because he's not a literal dragon, but at the same time, the representation of what that means to that family, like, she means he isn't a true Targaryen.
Yeah.
He wouldn't have put himself in a position to die in such a way.
Mm.
He wouldn't have acted like this. That's not how Targaryens do things. So he deserved what he just got, and he doesn't have a place in the Targaryen family at all. So I thought I've been seeing that throughout the last couple of times we've seen Daenerys and her split with Viserys, because she has bought all in to becoming this queen,
Mm-hmm.
as we've talked about many times.
Almost like Sansa has, but in like a more mature way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it was very cool to finally see that come to a head in Viserys's comeuppance.
Mm. And another thing I wanted to mention that I only noticed on this rewatch is when Daenerys, because I always noticed her saying that she didn't want to look away, but it was interesting because that reminded me of the execution, of Ned's first execution from the very beginning, where Jon tells Bran, "You can't look away. Father will know if you do. Like, that's not what Starks do." And Bran's like, okay, and reluctantly looks. And he does a good job. But then the opposite happens with Daenerys. Jorah tells her to look away, and she's like, "No, I'm going to watch this. Like, I have to watch this." Right. So it was like, I feel like those two things were meant to be parallel, but I just never noticed it before. But I just thought that was kind of cool, just to show just, like, the differences between, like, the expectations of these families and the expectations that the characters have of themselves, right, and what they're going to do about that. I thought that was kind of cool. Okay, so I think that was just about everything. Any final thoughts? Anything you think we might have missed, or anything that like stuck out to you in the episode?
No, I don't think so. No.
Actually, I did want to ask you one last thing. Are you excited to see what the future is for Daenerys now that she doesn't have to deal with her brother anymore? Like, will that change the way you watch her story, do you think?
I think you know the answer to this. I want to see the dragons. They've been teasing these dragon eggs every time we see her. And now, like, she's immune to fire? Come on. Don't do that to me.
That is so funny. So they're showing you like her skill set, and you just
Right.
want to see more.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay, cool. Okay, that is all I have too. We will see you guys next time for episode 7. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you later.